Hey everybody, welcome to session 5 of Military Reboot. Again, this is Cheryl, this is Brian, this is Jose, I'm Evan. We are so excited about today's topic because really from session 5 all the way until session 8, we're going to be talking through the root wounds that wound our souls and a lot of times lead to many of the symptoms. And so those of you who have kind of been maybe saying like, well, okay, when does this get a little more practical? This is when this starts. Okay, so we're going to dive right in. Imagine being assigned the task of immersing yourself in reboot groups for an entire year. What would you witness in the journey? Well, I've done that now for many years, and I can tell you at first, you'd be awestruck by the power of genuine friendship. You'd see how these connections built on trust and empathy guide people through their darkest days. The compassion, the unwavering support that they show to one another would restore your faith that goodness can still shine brightly in our world today. But then you'd also confront the harsh reality of humanity's darker side. You'd hear gut-wrenching tales of unimaginable abuse, stories that would shake you to your very core. You'd wonder how anyone could inflict such pain on another person. And as you journey deeper, you'd come face to face with the unsettling truth that mankind can sink to depths of evil that would stagger the imagination. For sure, this year-long journey would be like a ride on a roller coaster of emotions, swinging between heartwarming stories of care and the painful stories of cruelty. It's a journey that would reveal both the incredible potential for love and the unsettling capacity for darkness that coexists within all of us. In this session, we're going to delve into the wounds of abuse and betrayal. And at the heart of our conversation lies this paradox of human nature, the ability of one person to encompass both extraordinary good and profound evil. Think about all the roles that we play in our lives as parents, partners, leaders, friends, family. Each relationship presents the possibility of betrayal. It's confusing how the same mouth can offer both affirmation and abuse, or the same hands can provide safety or inflict harm. How do we heal from the wounds of abuse and betrayal? Will we ever trust people again? Will we ever see the world through the same optimistic eyes? During our time together, we're going to focus on 3 sources of betrayal, including betrayal from parents, partners, and institutions. And we're going to walk through each one individually, starting with betrayal by parents.
Far too many Reboot participants were betrayed by their parents. Before they could even defend themselves, before they could speak on their own behalf, and before they could fight back, they were abused or neglected. Tragically, the very people who are supposed to provide safety and support are the ones who cause them the most harm. Rather than their homes being a place of comfort, they became a place of fear. For them, home wasn't where the heart was, it's where the hurt was. So as soon as they could run away, they did. And for many, that led us to the military. The military represented a fresh start, far away from the dysfunctions of home. And many of us thrived in this environment. We moved up in rank, received commendations, and made something of ourselves in spite of our upbringing. With our newly acquired adult perspective, we were able to see how damaging and truly not normal our childhood was. We saw the extent and effects of the addiction, the abuse, the rampant neglect, and the lack of healthy boundaries.
Wow.
We vowed to be different and to never let any of our past infiltrate our future. And if I were to invite a group of Reboot graduates to this table right now, they would tell you that that worked pretty well for a while. That is until one day, without warning, and perhaps even without clear cause, their past started to come back. They would share that as they tried to raise their own children, they were filled with feelings of great inadequacy, wondering how they could be a good parent without a role model to follow. They would tell you about ongoing struggles with intimacy, emotional withdrawal, and distrust that would sabotage otherwise healthy relationships, leaving them feeling like something inside of them was broken beyond repair. When they left home, they thought they had left all of that behind. But they discovered that while time and distance helped, they didn't heal.
Oof, that's good.
Healing came through hard work, wise decisions, and clear boundaries. The same can be true for you. If you've experienced childhood abuse or betrayal, your younger self is waiting on your adult self to show up and fight for what's right. You can protest the injustice of the abuse and give voice to its impact of your life. You can advocate for your younger self. Let's do an activity together for a few minutes. Everyone take a slow, deep breath and close your eyes. I want to invite you to take a trip down memory lane, back to your childhood and teenage years. Where were you living? Who lived there? What was it like to come home from school every day? Now think about a moment when you felt betrayed, abandoned, or neglected by a parent. Once you have a memory in mind, see if you can find God in the midst of the pain. He was there. He hadn't abandoned you. Can you see him yet? Open your eyes. Did anyone spot those times when you felt all alone, but in hindsight, you realized God was there? In your field guides, write down any glimpse of God that you saw as you reflected on your past, then we'll take a few minutes to share. Okay, let's continue further with this activity. Take another deep breath and close your eyes. Revisit that same set of memories. Think about the moment you felt betrayed, abandoned, or neglected. Now imagine yourself, but as the adult, who you are today, stepping into that scene. You reach out, take your younger self's hand, and start talking. What do you say to them? What do you want them to know right now in this moment? I think for some, the better question is, what do you wish someone would have said to you all those years ago? Okay. Open your eyes again. You know, I think sometimes when you're doing videos, you're doing something like this, it can seem like we're just walking through things aimlessly, but it's all intentional. Again, if you go back to week 1, we said to trust the process. And I want to ask you guys, when you closed your eyes, when you envisioned yourself walking back as an adult into that situation, what did you tell yourself?
Well, for me, I visually saw my older self going to my younger self and pointing out everywhere Jesus was. Because the first time we did the exercise as a child, I did not see that. And then I started thinking, where was God? And sometimes we ask ourselves that when we go through trauma. Mm-hmm. But I started to see him in every step of the way. And then my older self, who I am now with Christ in my heart, I saw that visibly and I pointed it out to my younger self. And even from the view of the ones who were hurting me, how they were hurting too in that process. How even though that hurt was being caused, they still had hurt within themselves. And Jesus was there with them as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's all muddled up, but I can clearly see it now. You know, when we reflect back on this, we see where Jesus was every step of the way.
Cheryl, you got anything to add?
Well, for me, as the child, I felt almost helpless, but I did know that God was there. Yeah. And I thought that he was protecting me, even though the people with the pain that was hurting me, they knew that what they were doing was wrong, but they couldn't help themselves.
Sure.
So God had always given me this compassionate heart, but I wanted as an adult, well, when I was looking back as the adult, I wanted for God to, well, for the adults in my life to help me.
Yeah.
To see that I had changed when the abuse happened. So as the adult, I had to say to my younger self, it's okay. God's going to work it all out.
Yeah.
And he has.
Yeah.
So I think I saw myself at 6, hiding under a bed, trying to be as silent as possible, and just pleading for help. And when I go back to that 6-year-old me, help never came. But when I think about it now, help was there in the room with me.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, what's interesting is that it wasn't like I saw Jesus and God, you know, I saw them all in the room, but he was protecting the younger one. He was consoling the other one. He was doing so many responsibilities, never approving of any of it, but just trying to help everybody in their own mess and bringing them out of that. And sometimes we let ourselves be blinded by our anger, by our stress, by our anxieties, and we cause the hurts on others. And that's what I saw, is just understanding everybody in the situation through Jesus' point of view. So didn't approve any of it, but he was trying to fix all of it.
Yeah.
You've heard from us, but as we've talked this whole session, all these sessions, we've talked about vulnerability, right? We've talked about building authentic community. And it's your turn. In your field guides, you'll see some additional blank space. We're going to take 3 to 5 minutes to write down some of what you would say. What would you say to that younger self if you had the opportunity? You can write in bullet points, full sentences. Some of you may just write a couple words. That's okay. Whatever you're most comfortable with, but take some time and jot some of that down right now. If we're being completely honest, revisiting these memories can hurt. It can hurt a lot. But there's something amazing. You made it through. You kept going and overcame those challenges. Now you have a chance to stand up for your younger self. What could that mean for you? For some, it might mean helping or mentoring a young person who's been through a tough time, maybe even similar to yours.
Or you could volunteer at a local women's shelter or donate to help kids who need homes.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a really tough one, but some of us, we might need to even go and talk to the person who hurt you. You might need to do that and tell them how they have affected you.
No matter how you choose to do it, what really matters is that you're pushing back the darkness and finding ways of doing good rather than evil.
Wow. I don't know about you guys. I feel like that section on parents is hard. It's hard. I think it's a lot to unpack. And how many times do we carry that stuff into our adulthood, and then our adulthood really aggravates what was already there, you know? And so if people are watching this, I think it's good to say, like, it might be good if you need a break as a group just to take a second and be like, let's get some water, let's go to the restroom, whatever. I think that's okay. I know even us up here, we're feeling that a little bit. But for the sake of the video, like I said, it's okay if you need to take a pause before. Right now, I'm going to kick it over to Cheryl, and then we can talk through partners.
Now let's shift to our second source of betrayal, partners. Earlier, we asked you to imagine what you might witness if you were to immerse yourself in Reboot groups for an entire year. In addition to the profound acts of compassion and the horrific stories of cruelty, you would also discover a devastating reality: that many of those who escaped the environments of abuse as children ended up in abusive relationships as adults. In other words, the abuse switched hands, but it continued. Domestic assault, intimate partner violence, emotional abuse, infidelity. There are many types of betrayal and abuse that partners can inflict. While each is a completely unique experience, they all contain an element of psychological abuse. That's because all abuse is psychological abuse. Such betrayals cut deeply and leave us struggling to untangle the confused mix of love and hatred we feel. One day can be pure bliss, and the next, absolute abuse. Excuses upon excuses. Abusers are excuse-making experts. While dealing with abusive partners, there always seems to be extenuating circumstances. They might say things like, I changed my medication. It was an accident, or it wasn't actually abuse. Abusers repeatedly avoid taking responsibility and manage to manipulate the person they are mistreating into defending themselves. Those of us who have experienced this kind of betrayal know all too well the loss of self-esteem, the hypervigilance, and the constant anxiety that abuse causes. No matter how hard we try to tiptoe around our partner's moods, we're always in danger of stepping on a proverbial landmine, blowing up our entire day. If you have been or are currently in an abusive relationship with your partner, or if you are perhaps the one causing the abuse, here are 3 truths to consider as you heal. Fill in the blanks in your field guide as we walk through these statements. 1, repeated betrayal is abuse. Past behavior is a good indicator of future behavior. Serial affairs or one-night stands, a culture of control and manipulation, if it happens enough times to become a pattern, it's abuse. Each infraction wears away at trust. The damage compounds and must be stopped. This is where the practice of forgiveness with boundaries comes into play. 2, forgiveness without boundaries is called enablement.
Wow.
Interestingly, people of faith are often the most likely to justify and hastily forgive the behavior of their abusers. With the goal of practicing what they profess, they are quick to forgive and show grace without the expectation of change. The spiritual goal itself is commendable. However, while there is certainly power in forgiveness, actions should have consequences. Abusers might apologize, but it's vital to realize that your partner's remorse and desire to change aren't a complete fix. The deeper issue needs addressing.
Yeah, real quick, just what you were sharing, if I can jump in. I think about this in relation to, like, a comparison might be in addiction. If I apologize every time that I relapse, that is a step, and that's important in that process of healing, but it doesn't truly tackle the root cause of what's going on, right? The abuser, much like the addict, they have to be willing to identify the root cause of their behavior in order to change, right? They have to say, I have an addiction, and that's when they can begin to change and heal from there, because without clear limits, abusers, they can misinterpret an accepted apology as permission to continue their harmful behavior. And that's why I think it's so important, Cheryl, that we must establish clear boundaries to prevent that from happening.
Absolutely. Thank you, Evan. That was good. And 3, 1 Corinthians 13, love exists outside of fairy tales. 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7 reads, love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. This kind of love isn't reserved for fairy tales. You are worthy of this kind of love.
Yep.
A love without manipulation, sexual abuse, or physical violence.
That's right.
A love that reflects how God, your Heavenly Father, feels about you. Don't settle for less.
Thanks, Cheryl. As we close this session, let's shift our focus to a third form of betrayal. When you joined the military, you took an oath to defend and support your country and your fellow service members. You joined a brotherhood and a sisterhood that vowed to live by a certain code, a code of honor and selfless service. Everyone committed to never leaving another on the field of battle. Sadly, many service members look back on their military careers feeling abandoned or betrayed by the very institution that dedicated their lives to serving. The ideals, while deeply established, are not always upheld. And when the trust placed in these ideals is tarnished, it results in institutional trauma. Please understand, this is not an indictment of the entire military institution, rather a reflection of an imperfect institution led by imperfect people. The most shameful form of institutional trauma is that of a direct abuse by a fellow service member. It is more common than you might think to encounter Reboot participants who have been sexually assaulted, mercilessly hazed, or even directly attacked by another in uniform. This violence goes against everything the military stands for and leaves the victim confused, ashamed, and tragically, often blamed. That's right, blamed and shamed for the abuse they experienced. Reports are submitted and overlooked. Complaints are brushed aside. In their case, the trauma becomes even more overwhelming as the institution protects the perpetrator and dismisses the sufferer. These experiences take so much from them. It deprives them of the camaraderie they built within their unit. It swaps suffering for what should be a phase of their life filled with significance. Witnessing the chain of command behave in a manner that is unethical is difficult to watch. Be it by dismissing reports of abuse or passively permitting dishonorable actions on the battlefield, it wounds us deeply when the leadership of the institution we serve fails to live up to the standards they profess.
Wow.
Some Reboot graduates have been exposed to incidents within their units or in combat zones that far exceed the boundaries of rules of engagement. Civilians were seen as collateral damage, treated as less than human. They followed orders even though every voice inside of them told them that what they were doing was wrong. Now, years later, they still question whether their actions in the field truly served a higher purpose, or if they were just pawns in a game of war. This holds particularly true for wartime veterans who witnessed the mission they embarked on become muddled due to political rhetoric, uncertain strategies, and an ever-shifting adversary. As they reflect on the war, trauma deepens, and they question whether the mission was achieved. While they may have won the battles, did they truly win the war? And if so, at what cost?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question that so many are asking and have asked. You know, whether it was by direct abuse, negligence by leadership, or as you were just talking about, an uncertain conclusion to war. The effects of institutional trauma persist for years. Every military-related holiday serves as a reminder of your experience, casting a shadow over the honor of that service and over the military's reputation as a whole. If you've experienced institutional trauma, listen to me now, you aren't alone. You vowed to never leave a fallen comrade on the field of battle. But now you might be wondering who will come back for you. The answer is to your left and to your right. These are the men and women who are coming back for you. They aren't leaving you. They aren't dismissing what you've experienced. You don't have to convince them that the military wasn't perfect because they already know. While the institution may have let you down, your brothers and sisters in this room right now with you didn't. They may not have been there then, but they are here now, and so are we. Yes. If you've experienced institutional trauma, we want to give you a few moments to share. This is a time where you can feel safe to talk about things that maybe you felt like in your unit or when you were deployed that really it wasn't safe to share out loud. It's okay to do that now. We want to write a few notes in our field guides and then take a minute to share out loud.
Betrayal is the root cause of so many other wounds. In the wake of betrayal, we grieve our loss of trust in others and in ourselves. Betrayal leaves us feeling guilt, shame, and regret, as if the betrayal was somehow our fault. That's why it's so important to heal these wounds of betrayal. If there are root wounds, then perhaps betrayal is the rootiest of all of them. Here are a few practical things that we can do to begin healing. We're going to kind of pass these around. First, you can acknowledge the betrayal that happened and label it accordingly. What else can they do, Brian?
So good. Second, you can grieve what you lost as a result of it.
Cheryl, how about the third?
And lastly, forgive yourself.
Yeah, that's it. Those are three things that you can do right now. You can label it appropriately, you can grieve what you lost, and you can forgive yourself for it. And you can do that right now. You know, and obviously these steps are easier said than done. If betrayal was super easy to heal, it wouldn't hurt us so badly when it happens. The deep wounds require deep work.
Say that again.
The deep wounds require deep work.
Wow.
But don't feel overwhelmed, because over the next several sessions, we're going to work through these deep wounds together. We already have tackled the first one, which is one of the hardest. You're doing great. Keep going.